my video. Thoughts on the Star Wars The Bad Batch Season 3 Episode 15 episode, The Cavalry Has Arrived. The finale, another episode I love. Spoilers for everything Star Wars leading up to and including this. So, let's see. Yes, and the show is rated TV PG, so will this video be. Let's dive right in. So, yeah, yeah, I think I will start with just the show and Star Wars in general. You know, there's a decent amount of, like, what's the word, like poetic justice with, you know, I love this thing that I want to say she's called Dr. Scolder, which is also just a wonderful, you know, just like if there's one thing, how can you trust a doctor whose name is literally Scolder? It's like, ugh, you know, no, get away. I don't want to be scolded. But yeah, you know, she's like, you know, okay, as long as I'm in control of this robot, I think it's perfectly fine that at any moment's notice it might, you know, sedate someone without getting consent first, you know, because she assumes she's never going to be on the receiving end of that. And let's see, yeah, as you know, set up previously, yeah, indeed, you know, Omega releases the Zillow beast, and yeah, some really great stuff. You know, yeah, of course, it provided quite an effective diversion, you know, and yeah, I gotta say, it has been a while since I watched one of the like big live action movies, so I can't say for sure if this is more like a Zillow -1 or a Zillow X Kong. Didn't feel that much like a Roland Emmerich's 1997 Zillow, but yeah. And I think that, yeah, the action was great. The emotion really hit, you know. Yeah, I quite appreciate that Rampart literally does, like, if he had just gone along with, you know what, yeah, let's rescue all the clones, let's do that. You know, I'm sure that they would not have just eagerly turned their back on it, like you know, trusted him to not, like, betray them. But, you know, he wouldn't have ended up exploding. So yeah, he you know, dug his own grave. His greed and betrayal cost him his life. And then, oh right, yeah, I think the little kid is named Bairn, you know, Bame, something like that, you know, and yeah, I like you know, when they're you know, one of the kids is like signaling by, like, you know, hitting together two of those little things to signal to Omega, you know, the Dr. Scolder, I think it is no longer looking at us. It's okay, you know. And Baron is like, oh, we're banging things together. This is fun, and does it too. You know, that was pretty cute. And then, like, cries because it's, you know, it's a little baby, you know, at all the noise, and gets discovered by the stormtroopers, and then, you know, sleeps peacefully as the Zillow beast is attacking. That was pretty funny. I quite appreciated Omega reassuring. I'm afraid I can't remember the names of the different of the kids, but, you know, yeah, one of them is like, you know, I'm afraid of heights. I guess I wouldn't be much of a soldier. And Omega says, Wrecker's afraid of heights. He's the strongest soldier I know. You know, just, you know, you can do this. Just focus on you know, going up. Don't think about what's below you. Try not to think about alien resurrection, which this scene feels distinctly. So, you know, they're both carrying another character on their back who can't, you know, who wouldn't be able to climb on their own accord. Anyway, And let's see, yeah, and the fact that Echo is able to just move around, and so is Emery, because they're trusted, they work there, so they're able to gain access to areas without anyone thinking about because they kind of assume the Empire assumes loyalty. That might be it for the specific stuff. So yeah, just I really appreciated how dark this got, like kind of disturbing with they take off Crosshair's hand, and it's not like terrifying for us adults, but it's a TV PG show. For kids, some of the stuff pretty scary, like the part where this one individual comes towards Omega, and she's like she grabs the fires the stun blast, and it doesn't even seem to phase this guy, and he just keeps coming, and the lighting is all dark, and the music's that was very nicely done. I quite appreciate I think it's important for Star Wars that it gets like dark and so I think that I feel like there's one more thing I wanted to say. Right. So the since this is a prequel, that it helps fill in some let's see. Yeah, before I get into that, I wanted to say it is one of those things where, like, by the end, yeah, we don't really know what happens with these characters later. I suppose the fact that we haven't really heard them referenced before is because basically no one who makes it all the way to the end of this survives really directly interact with, they don't meet any of the Skywalkers or such, but let's see. Yeah, the Hemlock's research would have enabled, so yeah. To be clear, I'm still not a fan of the fact that somehow Palpatine returned, but basically the show is saying, yes, the Emperor was working on this kind of thing way back when. This is before the Death Star was completed, as we, and if Hemlock had survived, if his research had remained intact, or if the Empire had gotten their hands on these, these kids, again, especially Omega, they, it would have taken substantially less time to clone Palpatine at all. And because if I haven't read any of the additional, but based on the movies, as far as I can tell, they just got done cloning him relatively recently before the events of the Rise of Skywalker, or he grew into his power by then, something like that, because it kind of feels, I know, I'm not sure he was always meant to be. Certainly, I don't think Rian Johnson would have put him. But that's neither here nor there. But why would, why even make the clone of Snoke if he's just going to, yeah, if he could just approach Kylo as the Emperor, why not? Because that would have been pretty, like he learns, oh, this guy's like the grandson of Darth Vader, and he's obsessed with Darth Vader. Well, I'll just tell him I trained Darth Vader, so that would be, or technically not trained, but whatever, you get what I mean. But yeah, the fact that the research was lost by the end of this episode is part of why it took so long for them to get a workable clone of the Emperor, and why he needs Rey Skywalker. To be clear, I'm not saying that it sucks that Rey the character took the name Skywalker. I just think that we got to get away from this thing of, oh, you know, you're related to this person. Well, then you're important. If you're not, I don't know. You know, you don't have a famous last name. Anyway, yes, that's why the Emperor needed Rey to fully get back to full power. So, you know, the part of this show is explaining why it took them so long. It's not that they weren't working on it, which, you know, if you ignore this show, or before this show existed, yeah, it did kind of feel like, well, if they could just clone the Emperor, why did it take so long? This is the answer, you know. I'm really glad this is not the only thing the show does, because I don't think that's the most interesting question, but, you know, there's a lot going on in this show. And yeah, at the very, very end, we learn that, you know, yeah, this is a decent time to pause this video in case you clicked away from the episode as soon as the end credits start rolling. There's a little bit where, you know, Omega is basically like an adult. You know, feel free to pause this video and then watch that before watching on this video. But yeah, you know, she says the rebellion needs pilots now more than ever. I don't offhand recognize her. You know, it is possible that someone that looks very much like that has popped up, you know, blink, you'll miss it, appearance somewhere else in a piece of Star Wars media that was set during the original trilogy, but I don't offhand recognize. And I do feel like this is a bit of like reclaiming and saying, you know, yeah, maybe you don't need to be, you know, the main character in order to also help out. Like, I don't think this is them saying, and she was never useful again. This is them saying, you know, yeah, you haven't heard of her and you didn't know, but, you know, like, there's a... It doesn't always end well for Rebel pilots in the original trilogy, you know, sad to say. But I can imagine she's going to be one of the ones who really made a huge difference. She helped turn the tide of a battle or something like that. You know, so that's what there's, you know, they're saying just because, you know, Luke had a pretty insignificant, you know, like, when he first joins the rebellion, it's also like, well, who are you, you know, and yeah, here is, you know, a very impressive backstory that, you know, apparently doesn't come up, at least as we see on screen. But yeah, you know, she's able to keep really helping. And I think that might... Right, I appreciated how throughout this episode there were several times where it was like, wait, are they really not going to make it? Because, you know, we don't know any of these. Before we watched this entire episode, we didn't know if they actually made it or not for the various Bad Batchers, you know. There were, like, when it was clear that Wrecker was really badly injured, and they even mentioned, you know, we're out, he needs more, what was it, med patches, we're out of them, you know, it's like, is he gonna, you know, he's gonna heroically sacrifice himself and die when they get to the base, and then, you know, Crosshair says he's going in by himself, kind of thing. Oh, it was pretty cool to see. It's been a little while since we've seen a team of clones, you know, yeah, fighting on the side of good together. You know, that's, yeah, basically like, you'd have to go back to one of the seasons of the Clone Wars to see that. So that was pretty cool. Yeah, and, you know, even here at the end, you know, right when they free, yeah, when they knock Hemlock off the catwalk, I guess it qualifies as. I'm not the first person to say it. Someone in the Star Wars galaxy really has to invent railings. You know, I'll grant that there will be a period where it just leads to a bunch of railing deaths, But in the show, yeah, eventually it's going to save some people's lives. You know, some people are, instead of falling all the way off, they're going to land on that thing and be able to, you know, anyway. Yeah. You know, Crosshair is like, I don't know, I don't know if I can make this shot, you know, my hand. And yeah, you know, Hunter is basically like, I trust you, you know, and Omega has this under control. So I quite liked that. And yeah. Um right, yes. The absolute last thing I wanted to say, I do appreciate that, you know, yeah, we the events of this episode help postpone the rise of Skywalker, one of the weakest of the Star Wars films, significantly because of the, you know, because at the end of the day, like, you know, Tarkin could have said, well, get out, go out there and get those, you know, clone kids, or yeah, get the Jedi kids back, you know. But no, he says, you know, forget about all that. Focus on Project Stardust, which, you know, we know from Rogue One, that is the code name for the Star Destroyer. I mean, obviously, Death Star. Yeah. Did I have you? But yeah. And the fact that Tarkin's over-reliance on the Death Star, that his arrogance being his downfall, as it is with many fascists and other dictators in real life, you know, that has been there from A New Hope and onwards. You know, Darth Vader says, don't put too much stock into it. You know, the power of the dark side is greater than the power to destroy a planet. Leia says it to his face. You know, this is not gonna, yeah, his, and he even, you know, near the very end of the movie, he has a chance to try to evacuate, and he's like, in the moment of our triumph, you know. So yeah, this is completely consistent with that. And yeah, I want there to be like a deleted scene of like the Emperor finding out, you know, after the first Death Star blew up, you know, he'd be like, oh, well, that was a bust. Okay, how, what's the progress on cloning me, bring me back to life? Because I think we're all pretty aware I have too powerful enemies. One day someone's gonna frag me. Might even be an ally, who knows? And they're gonna be like, oh, the research, yeah, Tarkin, you know, nixed that years ago. It's gonna take us a minute to figure that out, you know. That would be pretty funny.